Welcome to Class Chronicles on WRFG 89.3 FM, your station for progressive information and hand-picked music. That was a cut from Rebel Diaz, Which Side Are You On? The views and opinions expressed in this program do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of WRFG's Board of Directors, staff, or volunteers. Happy, and wonderful New Year to everybody out there. And to everybody here in the studio. We got a nice crew with us tonight. I am really honored to turn over the mic to one of our team members tonight. Mitchell has produced tonight's show. And without further ado, I'm just going to turn it over. Thank you so much, Mitchell, for all you did with this.
Thank you. It's actually my pleasure. And also in the studio with me, I have one of our local rappers. You know how WRFG does it. We always bring in local talent to be exposed. Actually, Outkast was once in WRFG before they blew up as well, and Indy Ivory. Well, today we have the Clinician with us.
TC the Clinician.
All right. And we also have our old engineer. I'm really happy to have him back in my midst, Mr. Felton.
What's up, Mr. Mitch? How you doing?
All right, I had to bring him back in because this program is about rap, okay? And it's not usually what our traditional audience for Class Chronicles may be used to us talking about, but it does really affect class. This program is about the class struggles of the less fortunate youth who are inundated by the negative images and messages from today's music. Their external influences are compounded by the real-life struggles dictated to them by their class, environment, or lack of resources. This makes it significantly more difficult for them to navigate and separate themselves from their perceived environmental hazards. When you hear it in rap music and you see it in your streets, it's far more difficult to shape, avoid, or refuse. In other words, for those of us unfortunate enough to have their environments actually reflect or mimic predominantly destructive messages, they're far more likely to submit to the negative messages because they actually see the proof to substantiate this negative perception in their current situation. So it affects different classes different ways by hearing the same music. Okay? And what really brought me to want to do this program is, the more I listen to rap music today in my car driving, it just boggles my mind how much negative messages are being put out. And it made me wonder, how did it get that way?
Okay, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be on the show. It's an honor and a privilege to be sitting next to you, sir. Second though, you bring up some very good points in terms of like the industry versus old school versus new school. I would like to say though, when we talk about rap, we have to also keep in mind that rap is just a microcosm of hip-hop. You have hip-hop as the culture itself. Rap is a facet of hip-hop. So everything that you just presented in terms of the turntables, the DJs, the dancing, even the medallion that you're talking about, that's hip-hop.
That's hip-hop as a culture.
That's hip-hop as a culture. Rap is a facet of that. Now what's happened is, I think rap has become a reflection of the time in terms of how we perceive ourselves as individuals and as people. When you talk about the oversaturation of a certain type of music, when you're talking about, I guess you were talking about more like the club, party, drug promotion, violence, and misogynistic views that are portrayed on today's radio. I feel that that's a reflection of a lack of respect within the culture in terms of how we treat our women, how women see themselves, our embracing of, drugs and elements that, do things to poison the mind, and almost glorifies them in a sense.
No doubt glorifies it.
Which overshadows the positive music. Now there is positive music out there.
You still have there, but where do you find it? Where do you hear it?
You still have. You do hear some of it on the radio, but yes, it is overshadowed a lot of times. You still have your Commons, you still have your Talib Kweli's, you have your Lupe Fiascos.
Oh, yeah. They're out there, but you very rarely hear them on the radio, and you seldom, if ever, hear either of them in heavy rotation. And that's a big difference.
And that goes back to, I think, the point of when you had a culture that started from the grassroots. Like hip hop was a culture that took water and lemons and made lemonade as a result of, a lot of things. They took the music programs out of the schools. They took a lot of things away from us. So we were able to take that and embrace it and say, hey, we're gonna create our own. But now what's happened is the industry has taken over and commercialized it to the point where a lot of times artists don't even really have a lot of say in what they write.
That's the point I was getting ready to make. Another huge difference from now and back in the day is we used to have request lines back in the day. You could actually, if somebody really wanted to hear a song bad enough people called in, the DJ would actually play the song, or they would gauge what songs they want to play based on what was popular. Now it is driven by industry. It's driven by industry because it's all the same message. It's monolithic for the most part. And like you said, there are some positive rappers out there, but you have to go search and find them. You have to, but they will beat you across the head with 2 chains all day.
Or is it that we've been classically conditioned? I think a lot of times is we don't seek that. And I think that the industry is only as strong as the consumer allows it to be. So as long as we're giving in, and when I say we as a whole, of what's selling in the market, continue to buy into that kind of product and not support these artists that you're speaking of, then it's going to continue to play. And I think it goes back to how you're raised as well. Like when I grew up, I had to sneak and listen to hip hop music. My parents didn't even allow me to listen to it. I grew up on the Marvin Gayes, the Temptations, the Supremes, and Earth, Wind and Fire. I used to have to sneak and listen to that hip hop. But what it did allow me to do was it gave me an eclectic sense of all facets of music and its influence on the culture. It told stories. It was a sign of the times. And I feel now a lot of music that's played on the mainstream isn't a sign of the times in terms of the realism of what's going on. And I think a lot of times when I talk to even some of the kids that I work with in the community, I'll ask them like, yo, recite a line to me, recite a rhyme to me that you thought was just ill. Like you thought it was just, hot, from your favorite rapper. They can recite the hook, but they can't remember the actual verse or the lyrics. And then if you dissect what they're talking about, like they're like, oh, it's real. But I'm like, how is it real? How is it empathetic to you? How does it relate to what you're going through? What does this music do to you? And they can't really tell me.
And see, now that's another great point, because when I did the program, the dollar sign doesn't necessarily have to be a negative image, but it can be. And it's a negative image if the way that you're propagating this money is something that's, beat me over the head about how rich you are, and I live in the hood. And see, there's been, when I did the research, there's been a direct correlation between mental illness with America's rise in materialism. Because there's a certain tension created between what you want and what you cannot have. And I had to explain to these young men that sometimes you may bring extra stress to your parents by wanting some Jordans that your mother can't afford if you have a single parent mother. Because some people in our country is so materialistically bound that sometimes we do equate human value with financial success. And see, these are 2 different things. But some of these things, these always being beat across the head with gold this, gold that, Bentleys, Maybachs, and all that stuff. It creates a certain desire for these things. And what is the rap's message way of getting these things? All they're talking about is selling drugs, for the most part. Anytime they're talking about what they got, this, that, and the other, and most of the rappers, most of the big time rappers started from selling drugs. I mean, even Jay-Z and a whole host of other ones. So when you communicate something about money and chasing this dollar, and the only vehicle you really presented to attaining these things are selling drugs, and this is the other piece about that, and I want us to discuss this too. On the critical thinking part of this thing, the way I drug this along to them, or strung these things together, I want them to connect the dots that, look, this message is consistently bad for a reason. The companies that are consistently pumping out this message are also heavily, and I say heavily, I mean heavily invested in the private prison industry. So it's not a coinky-dink that these messages are always negative, and they talking about drugs, and they talking about violence, and they talking about this, what I got and the other, and then at the same time, they're going to benefit from somebody succumbing to this type of behavior financially. So I was explaining to them that these messages are driving them straight to something that benefits the person. I mean, some of the research I did showed that how these industries go and lobby against reform for certain crimes. They don't want you to to come out of jail early from some trumped up charges that we now realize were unfair.
Well, one thing interesting about prison systems is they're not owned by the government. They're independent.
They are private
Private prisons.
for profit.
Yeah.
For profit. Now that's kind of a conflict of interest right there. You know, to have that.
It really is. And then the interesting thing too is I know you point out another point about the correlation with the prison system, but also on a deeper note with reading. Mm-hmm. They've done studies that a lot of prisons actually
can predict the amount of beds at the third grade reading
level. Third grade reading level.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's a correlation with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is somewhat tied in to a lot of things, and like you talk about the subconscious mind and you know how music can influence that. It's a very powerful thing. It's a very, very powerful thing. I just think there's definitely an oversaturation of it, but at the same time, I think it also goes to reinforcement within the home as well.
Oh, no doubt.
Because I mean, we have it's just like you know when you watch those shows you're not supposed to watch. Mom and dad has to come in and say, hey, you can't watch that.
No doubt.
And say, hey, you know, you're not supposed to be doing that. But I think a lot of times what I'm seeing as well is the parents actually engaging and reinforcing the kids to listen to certain types of music and certain types of negativity. So I think it also comes into the upbringing. I think there's a lack of cohesiveness. Mm-hmm. It takes a village to raise a child. Like when I was growing up, I had not only my parents, my grandparents, my uncles, my cousins, or even just friends of the family that had a vested interest in my future. I think a lot of times now it's pretty much everybody for self, and then you know you have a lot of especially within, certain cultures, single parent households where kids are, being raised by a single parent or, having to be parentified in a sense to grow up really fast, which I think in turn allows them to be exposed to different things and, try these promiscuous ideologies that are, sometimes influenced by music. As a result of that, I feel that that's what kind of causes certain, things to happen with your, drug, violence, gang activity. However, we need to show people in different lights. I think you have to expose them to different things,
exactly.
Get them out of that element, get them out of that environmental context in order to convolute their thinking and increase their critical thinking, that, as you so eloquently put it earlier. So I think the goal of that is we have to be more invested, and we have to actually be more proactive as opposed to reactive and waiting for things like, oh, I can't believe I heard that on the radio. Okay, well, let's be more proactive in preventing that from getting on the radio.
Raise us think about some of this, And we're going to open up the phone lines at 404-523-8989. If you got a comment or a question, please call in. Now, another thing that I was explaining to the kids, in terms of, like you were saying, hip-hop is the culture and how it influences how we dress and how we behave. Pants sagging. I promise you, you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody on the planet more upset with their pants sagging than me. Every time I see one of these kids like that, I want to get a running start and try to kick a field goal because it just so irks me to death.
Hey,
and that has been influenced by the rap culture.
I would say when it comes to style, I look at it like this. Like, every generation, its predecessor seems to always have an issue with it. Like, I'm sure when you were growing up,
I get
like
that.
Even my dad, like when he grew up, his dad didn't like the Jerry curl or the fro,
a hairstyle or some clothing,
or the bell bottom. Like it wasn't really. So I think his predecessors there's always going to be certain things that they don't like.
I get that, but this is down the road and over the board. I mean, you're exposing your behind. I mean, that's hard to compare to a hairstyle or to a shirt or how you one leg up, one leg down, even inside out. Exposing your behind as a man, it just blows me away, especially when you explain to these kids how that started. That has roots in prison, where the homosexual men used to expose their behinds by sagging their pants to let them know that they were willing to be penetrated by another male.
Mr. Mitchell, we happen to have a call online.
We have a caller. Caller, hello?
Caller?
Hello? Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I wanted first to say great conversation. I really appreciate the discussion. I think it's very necessary and very timely. And I had two comments to kind of chime in. The first one, I wanted to say that there are songs like Versace.
Oh, I was going to get to that one. Thank you.
Listen by Talib Kweli. And I think if you really gave people a choice between what they wanted to hear, a lot of times these more positive, more developed, more artistic type
Yes.
of music would win out. I think the problem is that people are not given that effort or not given that option. And you can't expect people to know what they don't know. If they've never heard the song Listen, they of course don't know that they like it. So that's one thing. The second thing is none of this is by accident. And I think you guys really hit on that and began to discuss it. I think, another correlation beyond the prisons is the decline in investment in public schools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as they're investing in prisons, as they're pumping this negativity into the community, as they're increasing people's hunger for these material things, they're also decreasing funding of public education. They're closing schools all over the country. This stuff does not happen by accident.
America keeps slipping further and further down the line on the educational scale.
Globally.
Further and further every year.
A global market, and yet we're not being given the skills that we need to really compete globally. So I just wanted to say thank you for having a conversation. I'm really, really excited about the discussion.
Well, thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, got another caller? Caller?
Yeah. There's something called positive hip hop out there. You can find it on 91.1 FM. And if you give me your email...
Wait a minute. You mean you can find it on 89.3 FM? That's what you mean.
There you go. Straighten them out,
Come on,
Philly.
Paul.
Tell it.
That's right.
It's on Saturday night on 89.3 FM from 10 to 1 a.m.
There you go.
All right.
But I wanted to get your phone number or email address, and I wanted to get in touch with you about positive hip hop and to see how we can distribute information to CD stores about 89.3 FM and other stations that play positive hip hop.
Okay.
What's your phone number?
We'll give that to you
At the end?
at the end.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for calling.
All right. Now, another thing that I want to discuss too that shows a tremendous difference between back in the day and now is female rappers. Okay, female rappers back in the day, we had MC Light, we had Queen Latifah, Moni Love, Salt and Pepper. We had Eve, we had Lauryn Hill. And now, because this was a separate question that I asked a young man.
Yes.
Name the most popular female rapper or your favorite female rapper. Either one of the two. And all I got was guess who? Nicki Minaj. And I got a couple of Lil Kims, believe it or not.
Okay.
But look at the message being sent.
Well,
Between, that was female rappers, that was, rappers being women back in the day. And look at what's being promoted with, Nicki Minaj now.
I think the main issue, I think the consensus is, I think females in the industry in general have it hard. Especially like female rappers. I think they're very, it's very hard for them. And if you ever looked at the Behind the Music with Nicki Minaj, she even talks about how she was treated, being hit on, sexually harassed, as a woman, very degrading. So I think a lot of times it's really hard for women, female rappers especially, to cross over with a certain appeal because I think it reflects on the culture, them not being taken as seriously, them being looked at as a sex symbol in a sense, as opposed to I want to be taken
I
serious.
think that
as a
depends
lyricist.
on how you present yourself. Because Queen Latifah has never been presented anything less than.
Well, I'm talking about current. I'm talking about current.
Right, current. Right.
I'm talking about currently, not back in the day.
Right, but see what I'm saying? If they could break through then, it wasn't necessarily fair or open for women then, but those women competed and they rapped and they were accepted. That came before now. It's no harder now than it was back then for a female rapper to get out there. The difference is what's being promoted. I'm sure most females, most black women would like to hear more Lauryn Hill. Would like to hear more of that type of thing as opposed to Nicki Minaj if given a choice. What I'm saying is I don't think the choice is really out there.
Well, it's definitely not present. I mean, it definitely, like I said,
We're not on mainstream.
Yeah, on the mainstream level, because you can find it underground.
You can go YouTube and you go
Because you have there's a dope
find-
lyricist, Jean Grey. She's really ill. Like she's actually with Talib Kweli's label, Blacksmith. But like there's a lot of them out there, or even Angel Hayes. She's another dope when she was in the BET cipher. I think that there's always a certain template or a formula. So basically, you know, Nicki Minaj is that template
And
at this point. So it's like, as a female rapper, it, you know, breaking into the game, you know, that's what
terrible.
that's what they
that's
want
the
you.
template. That's terrible.
And I mean,
Yeah,
just
just
the reality.
keeping it real.
Keeping
Just
it
keeping
real.
it real.
Yeah, I'm just being real. Like, that's
Right.
the template that they want them to follow.
Okay, and we're back with Class Chronicles. And right now, I'm going to go ahead and ask the clinician a couple of questions.
Okay.
What inspired you to become a rapper?
First off, I just want to just say right quickly that I'm not a rapper. I'm a lyricist.
All right.
I consider myself to be, you know, bigger than that. I embody the whole aspect of hip hop and the culture within itself. What got me into music in general was I've been writing since like I was 6, but you know, I had a lot of influences. The first album I listened to was Nas's Illmatic. You know, love that album, man. It was just real cool. And as I grew up, you know, listening to it, it just, you know, it was just, I can listen to it today and still take something new from it. But I really felt that I always knew I had a talent for writing. So I just felt that, you know, I had a power to inspire people with it. So I was like, you know, let me do something with this. So I started off doing spoken word, poetry. And I did performances, and you know, people were, you know, really vibing with it. It's like, yo, you got a message, man. That would sound dope, like over a beat, because it's kind of like you doing poetry, but you kind of rapping at the same time. Like, what do you call that? And I was like, you know what? I call it hip poetry.
Okay.
So that's my style. Like, I embrace that and I embody that. And you know, when I moved here to Atlanta for college, you know, to pursue my master's degree, I was like, you know, surrounded by so many people that were doing music. And I was just like, you know what? Like, let me try this. I got in the booth and I spit, you know, on my first piece, The Homo Sapien Struggle, in the studio. And I loved it. And ever since then, I was like, you know what? I need to do this. I have a message.
Well, tell me about the name Clinician. How'd you come up with that?
Okay, the clinician. Well, basically, my profession is I'm a therapist, you know. That's what I went to school for. I went to school for community mental health counseling at Clark Atlanta, HBCU. And clinician is a synonym for therapist.
And what population do you deal with?
You talking about within my field?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I deal with kids, ages like 4 to 17, and I deal with them. So yeah, like a clinician is somebody that heals the mind. So look at it like this. You got a physician, which heals the physical aspect of the human specimen, but you also have the clinician, which deals with the clinical. So that's what I deal with, and that's what my music deals with. It deals with the mind. You know, I'm the prognosis to the diagnosis of what ails you, so to speak.
Okay. Now, I've heard your Smarten Up song before, and I kind of liked it. It was pretty nice. Now, you said it's something about you have a Smarten Up movement?
Yeah, I'm actually wearing the shirt right now. Basically, yeah, like it's a movement called Smarten Up, basically increasing the minds of the masses. You know, there's actually a movement that we're starting. We actually have an event coming up, you know, so we're definitely promoting that. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's a Smarten Up movement, you know, like no dumbing it down at all. Like, increase the intellect, research. Be a critical thinking change agent. Challenge things, question things, research these things. Why are things the way they are? Don't be afraid to, you know, be proactive in your movement. Because oftentimes, like even with certain situations, you know, that I've just seen as growing up, it seems like oftentimes, you know, something tragic happens, and then people are just like reactive, like yeah, we're in the moment. But then like the momentum just seems to waver and taper off, and people forget, and then it's just like on to the next big thing. So let's be proactive. Let's be preventative of this, and that's what Smarten Up is about. You know, let's be solution focused. Let's find out about these policies and procedures and increase our understanding of the situation.
I just think today's music really needs to have people come together and try to right the wrong of the ship. But see, can you imagine any of the artists today getting together collectively, like we saw in Self-Destruction, and saying that some of this music is destructive?
I believe anything is possible. I believe
anything is possible.
I mean, you
too,
do have.
how likely is this given today's climate? You know, this is another difference in terms of where the direction of our artists are also driving.
But I will say this. You know, I was watching an interview on the Breakfast Club, and I was listening to Timberland and Missy Elliott talking, And you know, Timberland, he brought up a good point. He was like, music is kind of like politics in a way. Like every 4-5 years is a shift. And I think like if you really follow it, there's a shift coming with artists that are coming out that are lyrical. You do have J. Cole's, but you also have the Kendrick Lamar's, you have the Ab Souls that are starting to like break that barrier of mainstream. Like, you know, Kendrick's album did very, very well. And, you know, I think that it's slowly but surely happening. I mean, you have people that are coming out. It may not be happening at the pace that, you know, most would like it to be, but there's a yin and yang to everything, and the balance is coming. And I can see a movement, you know, coming eventually.
So you want to get his track up now?
Yeah, let's go ahead and get into this. You'll introduce it?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, the name of the track is actually called Smarten Up, and it's a track to, you know, just basically like artists up your bars, you know, get ready. You know, it's a new age, a new era in hip hop, the Clinician.
Ordained with stealth of shinobi. I'm a silent killer, draining health with force of Kenobi. Metachlorine, makeup props, my consistence more clutch than Kobe. With feels of devil 6 and 6 cents from the 6th man like Mono Ginobili. The duration of this exhibition may cause inhibition to your cognition if your mental registration lacks essential recognition. To rebirth the manifest destiny, subliminal reincarnation for a clinical legacy. These legs I see are slow paced and effigy. A dream state they're in if they seek to surpass me. For I'm the melody of hip poetry. Enhance the skills to succeed in my teacher's mastery. Disastrous trails lie before the propensity of society. Who dare test who I detest like sobriety, and then pass them with frying colors to the industry. Rational, beautiful, real, pathological. Raising conscious awareness to complete pinnacle. Slashing Kenpachi, feel my Riyatsu. Spawn Katsu, revival being sensu. Slice, dice, then cleanse like Vishnu. Freedom fighter flow, forget eternal revenue. Powered up to levels, dark and known. These skills are ill, forever behold. Niggas cower before the synergy of my blade. Bathe the wolf's bane, the vampire slaying like blades. Sharp enough to cut through veins of bane. The brain becomes inhumane. The sight of the slain, pure poison like white cocaine at the tour's lane. To a heavenly cloud, non-constrained. It won't sustain life until they abstain from how membrane feel my strife. A clouded fantasy with my flow as the souvenir. Mystical enchantment unfulfilled until I find my Guinevere. A damsel in distress, I stress the mess. Catastrophic until I bless with subliminal holy water. The world's tyranny of habit with me as the martyr. No compromise, don't bother, I won't bother. Disturbing me will leave you in suspended animation. Forever the revolver. Orbit the astral planes until the breath wanes. Lack of oxygen gains, suffocation harkens at the demise. The uneducated despise my rise. Trying to borrow rhyme like loan subsidized. I subdivide the monopoly of the franchise.
Alright, and we're back.
Okay, so for more information, I'm doing an event. The name of it is called Project Smarten Up. It's going to be March the 29th from 1 to 4 o'clock. You can find me on Facebook. Just type in Eli Martin III, or Instagram, The Clinician. That's TheCliniCian. Thank you.
Alright. Thanks for listening to Class Chronicles. Next up, Peach State Festival.